The room still carried the heavy silence from the last announcement. Everyone's faces reflected the same uneasy mix of exhaustion and dread. The air inside the Codex headquarters felt warmer than usual, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Outside, the night had settled in with a strange stillness, the kind that made you wonder the world preparing for something you could not yet see. The massive hollow screen in front of them was still lit, frozen on the bold red text that marked the end of their previous challenge. The countdown clock that had tormented them for the last 48 hours was finally gone, replaced by a new emblem they had never seen before. It was darker, sharper, and seemed to pulse faintly, like a heartbeat. No one spoke. Even the hum of the ceiling vents seemed quieter. Rayan sat in the corner, his knuckles white around a cup of untouched coffee. He had been through plenty of tense missions before, but there was something about the Codex's games that felt different. They did not just test your skills. They tested the parts of you that you did not want anyone to see. From the other side of the room, Zara pushed back from her console. She was the first to break the silence, her voice low but steady. It is not over. That symbol, it is a warning. They are building to something. Before anyone could respond, the screen flickered again, as if acknowledging her words. The Codex insignia vanished, replaced by a grainy video feed. At first, it was just static, but then a figure emerged from the shadows. The familiar distorted voice filled the room, deep and calculated. You have survived the first sequence. Many would call that luck. We do not believe in luck. A pause followed, letting the weight of the words settle. You will now face the next tier. It will not be a simple test of speed or strength. This is a trial of perception. The camera shifted, revealing what looked like a massive underground labyrinth, dimly lit and lined with metallic walls that curved unnaturally, almost like they were grown rather than built. Shadows moved along the walls, but they were too quick to identify. This is the maze of mirrors, the voice continued. Every wall reflects not only light, but truth. Here, you'll see more than you wish to. Paths will shift, your senses will betray you, and the deeper you go, the harder it will be to tell friend from foe. Find the exit before the time runs out, and you may keep your place in this game. Fail, and you will remain inside, forever part of the maze. The screen went black again, but the air in the room felt heavier than before. Everyone's eyes were fixed forward, each of them knowing the Codex never exaggerated. If they said forever, they meant it. Rayan finally set his cup down and leaned forward, his voice breaking the tense silence. All right, who's going first? The second day of the challenge began under a restless sky. Clouds pressed low over the ruins, as if the city itself was bracing for what was about to come. The Codex team stood in the old plaza, a place once meant for festivals and laughter, but now littered with broken statues and vines creeping through the cracks. The air was damp, and each sound carried unnaturally far, making even the faint rustle of leaves seem suspicious. They had barely recovered from yesterday's relentless survival trial when the next announcement came through the distorted speakers mounted high above the plaza. The voice of the overseer, the faceless mind behind Codex, was calm, deliberate, and disturbingly cheerful. Congratulations on surviving your first trial. Today's challenge is called the Keeper's Key. Somewhere in this city lies an ancient mechanism, older than any map you carry. It is locked, guarded, and nearly impossible to find. You will have 8 hours to retrieve the key and activate the mechanism. Only then will the path to your next location be revealed. Fail, and the city will seal itself forever. A mechanical chime followed, echoing between the ruined buildings and then silence. No one moved at first. It was Aaron who finally broke it. This feels different. Yesterday was brute force. Today is going to be a test of our minds. She was right. The map Codex had given them was deliberately vague, marking only a wide area in the north sector of the city. To get there, they had to navigate through twisting streets where every shadow seemed alive. Strange markings were carved into the walls at random intervals, some so fresh they looked like they had been made just hours before. As they progressed deeper into the sector, the team began noticing a pattern. The symbols on the walls were subtly shifting, as though the city itself was rewriting its own instructions. Taryn, the quietest member of the group, stopped them near a half-collapsed library and whispered, "These aren't random. They're guiding us or trying to mislead us. Inside the library, the dust hung in the air like a slow-falling mist. The floorboards groaned under their weight. Old books were scattered everywhere, many of them gnawed by rodents or rotted through by time. In the center of the main hall was a cracked marble pedestal with a single bronze plaque bolted to it. The words were almost worn away, but under the dirt, one line stood out. The keeper does not speak, yet hears every question. Before they could decipher it, a sound came from the far corner, a slow scrape, like stone against stone. They turned to see a massive, four-legged sentinel emerging from the shadows. Its body made of black iron and glowing veins of molten orange. Its head swiveled toward them, releasing a hiss that sent dust spiraling in the air. "Run," Rafe said, no hesitation in his voice. They darted between the shelves as the sentinel gave chase, its heavy steps shaking loose pieces of ceiling. Every turn through the ruined corridors felt like a gamble. Then, just as it seemed they would be cornered, Aaron spotted a stairwell leading down. They took it without thinking, plunging into darkness until they emerged into an underground chamber that looked nothing like the rest of the ruined city. Here, the air was dry, and the walls were covered in murals of strange humanoid figures with elongated arms, offering keys to faceless warriors. At the center of the chamber was a stone figure holding an actual key carved entirely from crystal, suspended in its hands. The problem was obvious. The figure was encased in a sphere of shimmering light. "It's a resonance lock," Taryn said quietly, almost impressed. "We can't touch it unless we match the frequency keeping it in place." The only clue lay in the murals. Each one depicted the figures in various postures, standing, kneeling, reaching toward the sky. Aaron began trying different combinations, positioning herself and the others in the exact poses shown. After several failed attempts, they heard a faint hum, and the light began to flicker. But before they could complete the sequence, the sentinel's roar echoed from the stairwell. It was coming. The third day of the challenge began with a silence so heavy that it felt unnatural, as if the whole environment was holding its breath. The arena's massive dome loomed above, its semi-transparent panels revealing a muted sky that flickered faintly with warning lights. There was no announcement yet, no loud fanfare like the day before. Instead, the Codex team let the suspense build. Inside the waiting chamber, the participants sat in scattered positions. Some leaned back with eyes closed, others fidgeted with equipment, pretending to check straps and settings but really just trying to control their nerves. The events of the last challenge still weighed on them, especially the unexpected twist Codex had thrown at them. For Zane, the quiet was worse than any noise. His mind kept replaying the final moments from the previous round, how close they had been to failing, and how Codex's cryptic parting words hinted at something far more dangerous ahead. He glanced at Raya, who was seated cross-legged in the corner, her gaze fixed on the ground but her fingers tracing small, invisible patterns on her knee. It was her way of thinking through strategies. "Third day," Zane murmured, breaking the silence between them. "Third day," she replied without looking up. "And Codex hasn't repeated a single type of challenge yet, which means it's going to be nothing like the last ones," he finished. Before either of them could say more, the entire floor vibrated once, like a giant heartbeat. A deep tone followed, resonating to the air and settling in their chests. The massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid open, revealing the Codex team standing on a raised platform. Their leader, draped in a coat that shimmered with coded patterns, spoke in a voice that carried without shouting. "Participants, the next stage will test more than your speed, more than your strength, and more than your willpower. It will test your ability to navigate chaos itself." A section of the wall behind them shifted, revealing what looked like an enormous maze. But it wasn't a static structure. The walls moved, shifting positions with mechanical precision. Some rose while others sank, and in the distance, strange lights flashed between corridors, hinting at hazards inside. "You will be released into the maze of shifting realities," the Codex leader continued. "Its layout changes every 90 seconds. Paths will appear and disappear. Doors will lock behind you without warning. Some sections will be illusions designed to make you doubt your senses." Someone from the back of the group called out, "And the objective?" The leader's eyes glinted. Survive long enough to reach the center. But reaching it is only half the task. What you find there will determine if you are worthy to continue. Murmurs spread through the group. This wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. Codex was setting them up for mental exhaustion as much as physical strain. The leader gestured toward a rack of small devices on the side. Each of you will wear a reality tracker. If your perception becomes unstable, it will attempt to correct your view. If it fails, you will not be able to continue. Zane and Raya exchanged a look. Illusions meant they could be separated, tricked into thinking the other was an enemy, or worse, guided into traps by their own minds. The shifting walls meant that even perfect memory wouldn't help. The air in the chamber seemed to grow heavier as the participants approached the maze entrance. The sound of grinding metal and distant thuds echoed from within, like a heartbeat of some giant machine. Zane tightened the straps of his tracker, feeling the cold metal against his skin. "We stick together," he said quietly to Raya. She nodded once, her eyes sharp. "Always." The Codex leader raised a hand. An enormous entrance gate to the maze began to open with a groan of ancient machinery. A flood of stale air rolled out, carrying a scent of dust, oil, and something faintly electric. When the signal blared, the participants surged forward, their footsteps echoing against shifting walls that already began to move, sealing some paths and opening others. The first 90 seconds had begun, and the maze was already alive. The Codex room felt different this time. The low hum of its ancient server seemed louder, almost like a warning. Dim blue lights rippled across the walls, casting shifting shadows on the faces of the team. No one spoke for the first minute after they entered, as if the air itself was holding its breath. "Why does it feel heavier in here?" Ryan finally asked, glancing at the massive curved console that had once been the heart of their challenges. Isha, who had been the most confident among them, was now visibly uneasy. "It's not the room," she said, her eyes narrowing. "It's the Codex. It knows we're about to start something we might not finish." They had survived the last challenge, barely. That had been a 5-part gauntlet filled with physical trials, mental puzzles, and nerve-breaking time limits. It had been exhilarating, terrifying, and somehow addictive for everyone watching and playing. The audience numbers had exploded. People loved seeing them pushed to the brink. But this time, the Codex promised something unlike anything before, and those words were still stuck in everyone's heads. On the central screen, a glowing interface began to shift. The familiar grid of data lines warped and twisted until it formed a strange circular symbol none of them had seen before. A deep mechanical voice echoed around the room. "Participants, welcome to the sequence." A shiver went down everyone's spine. Ryan frowned. "The sequence? That sounds vague." "Vague is dangerous," Isha muttered. The Codex voice continued, slow and deliberate. 5 stages, 5 environments, 1 continuous timeline. If you fail in one stage, you will not move forward to the next. There will be no second chances. This was already different. In the past, each challenge had been self-contained. Even in the famous 5-chapter gauntlet, they had small breaks between trials. Now, they would be moving through one massive, uninterrupted series of challenges, where failure anywhere meant the end of the entire run. The hologram expanded, showing blurred glimpses of environments. A dense, foggy forest with something moving inside it, an ancient library with shelves taller than skyscrapers, a massive glass tunnel deep under the ocean, a sprawling mechanical maze lit only by flickers of molten metal, and something else. The 5th image was distorted beyond recognition, static tearing through it. "What's the last one?" Adil asked, leaning closer. The Codex ignored the question. "You will begin with no map, no guide, and no tools except those you discover along the way. Knowledge from one stage will be necessary for the next. If even one of you falls behind, the sequence resets for all." It was a cruel twist. In a team challenge, usually the stronger members could pull the weaker ones forward. But here, one mistake could wipe hours of effort. The room went silent again. Outside, the world was waiting. Fans of the Codex games were already flooding comment boards with speculation, theories, and fan-made strategies. The hashtag Codex sequence was trending before the team had even left the briefing room. Isha finally broke the silence. So, we either win this thing together or we all lose together. Ryan gave a small, humorless laugh. Perfect. No pressure. The Codex's final words before the room powered down were chilling. You may step forward when ready. The sequence does not wait for hesitation. The floor beneath them shifted slightly, a low vibration running through their shoes. Somewhere in the distance, a heavy door was unlocking. They all looked at each other. This was it. The start of something that could be the most unforgettable or the most devastating challenge the Codex had ever unleashed. Isha took the first step toward the sound of the opening gate. Let's move, she said quietly, before we start thinking about what could go wrong. The others followed, and as they passed into the dark corridor beyond, the light behind them faded to nothing. They were now inside the sequence. The night air felt heavier than usual. It carried the scent of damp earth and the distant hum of machines that never seemed to rest. The Codex team stood in a loose circle, each of them still catching their breath from the ordeal they had just survived. The glow of a neon grid beneath their feet faded slowly, one section at a time, until the entire arena was swallowed by darkness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the Codex's voice came, deep and layered, echoing from every direction. You have completed the challenge, but the real trial begins now. A shiver ran down Zara's spine. She exchanged a glance with Rayan, whose eyes narrowed in suspicion. They had just endured something brutal, a challenge that tested their trust in one another, forcing them to make decisions no team should ever have to make. Yet the Codex spoke as if that had only been the warm-up. We play by your rules, Rayan said, his voice sharp. You promised this was a final stage. The Codex gave a low, distorted laugh that seemed to vibrate in their bones. Promises are not always what they seem. You see, each of your victories has been carefully measured, each failure documented. And now, we move to the part of the game where the pieces think they can outplay the board. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them split apart, the platform breaking into massive stone-like tiles that began to drift in different directions. They were no longer standing in a single arena. Now they were separated, each tile drifting into a black abyss, leaving only faint golden lines in the void below. Stay calm, Zara called out, trying to keep her balance. But her voice was carried away by a strange, warm wind that seemed to come from nowhere. The Codex continued. For the next challenge, you will not fight together, you will fight yourselves. What do you mean? Kenzo shouted across the widening gap, his voice shaking slightly. The Codex's answer was unsettling. Every choice you made, every doubt you ever felt, every weakness you tried to bury, I have it. I have shaped it. And now you will meet it. From the darkness below, shapes began to emerge. They were human-like at first, but as they drew closer, the team could see the differences. The figure approaching Zara moved exactly like her, but its eyes were empty pools of silver. Rayan's double carried the same blade he did, except it seemed heavier, more brutal. Kenzo's copy had a constant, mocking grin that twisted into something almost inhuman. They're us, Zara whispered. But wrong. Not wrong, the Codex corrected. Perfect. They are the versions of you without hesitation, without morality, without restraint. You will defeat them or they will replace you. The tiles stopped drifting, locking the real Codex team face to face with their twisted counterparts. The tension was unbearable. Rayan took a step forward, his double mirroring him exactly, like looking into a broken mirror. If you think I'm scared of a copy, you're wrong. The Codex's voice deepened. You should be, because they are not copies, they are the true reflection of your potential. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, the kind that made your heartbeat race without knowing why. Somewhere far above, a thin light broke through darkness, illuminating each pair in eerie isolation. The game had changed, and for the first time since the challenges began, the Codex team wasn't sure if they were meant to win. The air inside the chamber felt heavier than before. A faint vibration echoed through the floor, as if the very structure of the place was alive and aware of their presence. Shadows swayed across the walls, not from their flashlights, but from some strange internal pulse that came from the Codex itself. The team stood in a tense half-circle, their eyes fixed on the towering column at the center. It was no longer dormant. Where once the symbols were dull and lifeless, now they were shifting and sliding like flowing water. Colors changed rapidly, flickering from deep blues to burning golds. The Codex was rewriting itself. Aiden stepped forward, his hands slightly trembling, though he kept his voice steady. It's responding to the last sequence we solved. That means it's listening to us now. Mara's brows knitted. Listening is one thing. Obeying is another. She moved closer, scanning the changes with her handheld interface. Numbers and language patterns streamed across her screen, so fast she could barely keep up. But before anyone could make another move, a low sound rumbled through the room, like a distant roar. A section of the floor near the far wall split open, revealing a spiral descent into darkness. A soft mist poured upward, glowing faintly as if lit from somewhere deep below. "This isn't on the original map," Vega said sharply. "Whatever's down there wasn't meant to be found easily." Aiden looked at the others. "The Codex just gave us an opening. That's the next step." But Orion, who had been silent all this time, shook his head. "Or it's a trap. The Codex doesn't give without taking something in return. Remember the last vault? We lost 3 hours and nearly got locked inside because we rushed." The debate was cut short when the Codex's shifting colors froze for an instant and a clear pattern appeared. The same triangular constellation they had seen in the ruins from their very first mission. Only this time, there were lines connecting the points, forming a shape none of them recognized. Mara's eyes widened. "It's not just a pattern. It's a challenge and it's incomplete. We'll have to finish it ourselves." From the open spiral below, the glowing mist thickened, curling upward like ghostly fingers, as if inviting them down. The unspoken question hung in the air. Were they ready to accept a challenge set by something that might not even be human? Aiden finally spoke, his tone decisive. "We came this far knowing it would try to outthink us. Now it's time we outthink it. Gear up. We're going in." The team exchanged tense looks but began preparing. The descent ahead was not just physical. It was a step into a place designed to test every skill, every fear, and every unspoken weakness they carried. And somewhere deep in the Codex's strange mind, the next game had already begun. The arena's silence felt unnatural. Not a single drone buzzed in the air, no engine hum echoed from the metallic walls. Every sound seemed swallowed by the tension that lingered after the Codex team's final move. For a moment, they all just stood there, staring at the glowing symbol on the central console. It was the Codex's final response to their challenge, a swirling pattern of shifting lines that didn't form words but felt like meaning. Zane leaned closer, his eyes reflecting the strange light. "I don't think it's just a victory symbol," he said quietly. "It's a map." Nova stepped forward, scanning the design, her brow furrowed. "No, not a map. A sequence. This isn't the end. It's unlocking something." Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath them vibrated with a low, steady pulse. The arena's walls began to change shape, metal panels folding and twisting like they were alive. What had been a closed battleground was now expanding, revealing a vast, spiraling passage that descended deep below. The light from the Codex symbol flowed down the tunnel, like liquid fire. "This wasn't the final challenge," Cade murmured, gripping the hilt of his weapon. "It was the key to the real one." Leora's voice was steady but tense. "If that's true, then whatever's down there is something the Codex never wanted in the wrong hands. And we just unlocked it." The temperature dropped as they stepped closer to the tunnel. The deeper they looked, the more the darkness seemed to move. Shapes shimmered faintly, almost like they were being watched by something just beyond sight. Zane's communicator crackled with a burst of static before a faint voice came through. "Codex team, this is Control. We're detecting massive energy readings beneath your location. You need to decide now. Descend and face what's next, or seal the passage before it's too late." The team exchanged looks. Every pair of eyes carried the weight of everything they'd been through, all the battles, all the close calls. But there was also something else there, the same spark that had kept them going through every challenge. Nova gave a faint smile. "We didn't come this far, just to close the door." Cade nodded. "Then we go. Together." They stepped into the tunnel one by one, the swirling light wrapping around them like a living current. The sound of the arena above faded, replaced by the echo of their footsteps and the distant hum of something ancient and powerful. As they descended, the Codex symbol followed, etched into the walls as if guiding them toward a truth that had been hidden for centuries. What waited at the bottom was still a mystery, but they all knew one thing. This wasn't just another challenge. This was the beginning of the real game, and somewhere in the shifting shadows ahead, something was already waiting for them.